Chilly here with Sirius Talis Moon Hour. Still moon hour as I begin. And the moon is 28 degrees. Mula Nakshatra, ascendant ruled by Mars in the 6th. Edit home sign. Midway between day and night chart, which is nice because I talk about unification of the sects a lot. And Moon Mula Nakshatra. Venus opposing Lilith. Ascendant, midheaven ruled by the Sun and Venus in the 8th house, Mercury in the 7th house. Mercury squares Pluto. Moon Mula Nakshatra. We are heading to a segment that, whether it contains a war or not, is about peace. And what do we need? Moon Mula Nakshatra asks us, what do we need to transmute around the galactic center to have peace? Now, the first thing to look at is what is approaching Mula Nakshatra. And the first thing that we see here, the closest thing, is Black Moon Lilith. And this is where, when we ask what do we have to transmute around the galactic center to have peace, has to do with the archetype of the woman that would not be subjugated. And Lilith here is both the Ghiselline Maxwells that asserted their sovereignty on the account of everybody else, including the feminine, and they stayed as Maxwell and not Epstein, and the women that rejected it in its entirety, but those would have to be on the periphery of the problem. Now, the periphery of the problem is basically where definitely people feel the problem. They can spend a lifetime healing from things. But they're also on the periphery where, let's just say, if I take you to an Oppenheimer archetype, then Oppenheimer didn't have the privilege to be outside of the circles of those. So, will we have peace with the Ghiselline Maxwell? No. But how do we transmute the people that their only venue for survival was to be a Ghiselline Maxwell? The Mula Nakshatra here, or the galactic center, trines Chiron at the end of Aries. And Chiron is conjoining with Aries. Now, if I take a look, I like to talk about, in this context, about Bill Gates. Bill Gates grew up within the Ghiselline Maxwell societies. He basically said that he wanted to turn into a virus that destroys entire humanity. And he was a man of his word. To the best of his abilities, definitely tried to castrate, to prevent the world from having continuation. Now, the world in which Bill Gates grew up in was a world where evil was preferred and not evil was eradicated. He can't say it, but actually, now that he's litigated, maybe he can. Bill Gates is not a ritual abuse survivor in the sense that he is not outside of the circles. Now we are reminded that peace is not about generating the next pandemic. And Aries is associated with those things. And this is also this is the closest to the modern day Oppenheimer that we have up until this timeline. Now Pluto does have some good 15 years before he sextiles Aries in a closing sextile. Now, when the actions of the Ghislaine Maxwells and Epsteins are no longer protected, it begins to cease to be economic to do these types of practices, whether it's occultistic, world policies, and so on. Juxtaposed to that, benevolence, kindness, fairness should be encouraged. Not encouraged in the sense that people only get rewarded when, but encouraged in the sense that people do not get eradicated for being kind. Okay, Kantian logos. Free of torture, death to entire humanity as euthanasia is a good third option. Because we have one option that's not sustainable, which is the Ghislaine Maxwell's. One option that looks utopic. And then we have a middle ground. Before Lilith moves with Ketu, she goes with Rahu. And she goes through Mula Nakshatra. With Lilith, the story is very important. If people are forced to have children, these children will die. Which means that if people are the Ghislaine Maxwell's, even, the Ghislaine, she had no choice and so on and so forth, amazing, the children will die. It's discontinued. You say also the adults will die and so on and so forth. Yeah, but the point is we don't want to leave infants that are orphans. Now, those practices, mind you, is rape of infants, which makes infanticide euthanasia. And the adults that they traffic were the infants that were raped and are tending to their infanthood stage. Actual peace can only be achieved by abolishing rape and ritual abuse and so on and so forth. Honoring the feminine. There's no two way about it. Because that which rapes is the feminine elsewhere. But that which honors the feminine can actually unite and regain sense of self and so on. Whether it's feminist AI, feminist occultism. Okay, feminist occultism is zero rape occultism, zero occultistic rape. Ghislaine Maxwell is not feminist occultism in that sense. One could say, oh, it's feminist occultism because she was a woman within a male society. Amazing. Those Pluto in Capricorn days are over. Now Ghislaine Maxwell is portrayed as Marie Antoinette. Okay? The only raison d'etre for Ghislaine Maxwell to climb up the ladder is to abolish occultistic rape from the top to the bottom and from the bottom to the top. Else she is just a Marie Antoinette. It's another, because the type of society there is like people climb up the ladder to be guillotined. And the more they try to put it on another, okay, with the more it becomes a Marie Antoinette. The presence of Lilith here reminds me again. Lilith was the woman that would not be subjugated. Where? In bed. What is would not be subjugated? She would rather kill the babies than be trafficked. Anything that dishonors the feminine, before now, in 2030 we're going to have a different, an opposite picture. Venus is going to be in Sag, and Lilith is going to be with Ketu in Gemini. But before Lilith goes to be Ketu, before she goes to the Ketu, she's turning every stone along the way. No stone unturned, no word in the scripture, no place in the economy, the intelligence, the diplomacy, the technology, the occult, and so on and so forth. And to the extent that we align with a world that doesn't subjugate the feminine, not just women. What is subjugate the feminine? Not to rape infants, because infant is yin, is the feminine. You don't. It's kind of like you don't want to continue the practice of raping infants in the clergy and so on and so forth that affects families. Don't traffic people. They are those infants. Prefer euthanasia over trafficking. Um, if people want the people to get used to evil, let them get used to daily practices of manifesting, creating, and taking steps to nuclearly destroy entire world without torture, immediate death for everything, technology and not technology, every living thing, every dead thing. It's the most humane, reasonable thing to do. But the only thing that is more humane is to abolish completely any type of occultistic rape of infants, any type of those practices, from indigenous, not indigenous, spirit and matter, whatnot, technology, whatnot. Now, why is everything so polarized? The first thing is Lilith is about to reach the galactic center. Its Mula Nakshatra is a place of transmutation of almost everything. It's a transmutation of the way we transmute even. Rape cannot be a part of abolishing rape. And Lilith Rumula Nakshatra is going to be one of those things that, if they happen during wartime, now here's the positive news. Mars is separating from the on-the-minute square with Jupiter, and yet the separation is usually the release of the stress. We're going to have Mars conjoining Chiron and Aries, which is not good for war. But Mars in Taurus can be boots on ground, which is too early for any beginning of war. Wow. We don't begin by boots on ground. So, do we actually have an election here for a war? No. Now, definitely Mars Jupiter square is a religious war. Wow. But the next planet that Mars meets is Chiron and Aries. Chiron is a wound around strategy. And then Mars leaves tropical Aries and ingresses to Taurus, which is slower, is ground is Mars Taurus is very literally one of those earth signs, so it's boots on ground. We don't want to begin a war with Mars in a fixed sign. Why? What is a fixed sign? Fixed. And definitely not in a fixed earth sign. Also, we don't want to begin a war when Mars is square in Pluto. Now, here is the drama. Mars square in Pluto is a very militant aspect. If people that have children are participating in, let's say, raping someone, they should not expect their children to live. They better have their children euthanized, is what I'm saying. Or not to rape. I don't know. I mean, that makes more sense. Because what happens when a person is violated, their sense of self is lost, the soul is out of the body, they're dissociated. And it's their infant self, because that was what prompted, which is why it's so important to seize these practices. In fact, let's take a look at when Mars squares Pluto. Mars enters Taurus May 19. And it squares Pluto May 26. Now Pluto will be retrograde as of tomorrow, so it will square Pluto when Jupiter is 22ing on degree 5. Saturn 11 degrees. So we have the 11, we have the 22, and we have Mars square Pluto from degree 5. Royal armies, it can be boots on ground. Venus in Cancer, between nations, continuation of the negotiations by other means. Moon in Libra. Mercury 18, so we have the 11, the 22, and the 18. Doesn't look too good. Let's just say, suffice to say, abolishing occultistic rape is beyond imperative. Okay, Pluto is the occult. Mars can be military in sign of Venus. It's fixed land, but it can also be war or women soldiers. Venus in Cancer, between nations, to do with mothers. Moon in Libra, applying to oppose Saturn. Saturn 11 degrees. Suicidal structure. The Saturn ruling over Pluto. Suicidal structure. Even suicide cults. And Mars ruling over that is military action. Is something very weird. Explosives, maybe. Now, there was a discussion about microatoms, and with Uranus applying to trine Pluto, the explosive might be microatoms. That and if yes, they're gonna have toxins that are not easy to detect with 18 degree here. Venus can tell me here that mothers can die, women can die, but also that they are a part of the war. They could be fighting the war, or they could be also fighting. They could be also doing like occultistic stuff. Jupiter 22ing, children assassin. It's both the child assassin and children assassin. Murder of children, but also children murders. Murderers that are children. People, now, I cannot stress this enough. If somebody was okay with euthanasia, the world should remember that. Like, you know what I mean? Okay, like that person was okay with euthanasia. And we should also remember that there is no religion that justifies inquisition, which is occultistic rape, basically. Like I said, if certain people were okay with euthanasia, remember that. The only thing to convert to is anything that abolishes occultistic rape and ritual abuse. No. Which should not necessitate, let's say, inquisition. A raped person converts only to Oppenheimer. Man or woman, child or adult. No. Nah, but it's true. Now, needless to say, war strategies that are rapey, whether occultistically or not, undermine anything that they try to achieve. It is also true in time of peace. Definitely business strategies. Um, now, people that think that there is such thing as sheeple is a part of these timelines that are Ghislaine Maxwell's. Is basically a form of ignorance induced by rape and occultistic abuse. That, but it's true.